Welcome to the YouTube channel of Nghe An Newspaper and Radio and Television. Here, you will be able to follow and update the latest international news, the most interesting developments in domestic and international current affairs. Today's program includes the following noteworthy content.
September 16th. Russia and Belarus concluded 5 days of joint military exercises called Japet 2025 to test combat readiness. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said that the two countries practiced launching tactical nuclear weapons as part of the joint exercises. State media in Belarus said that the exercises also involved the Odesnik medium-range hypersonic cruise missile deployed by Russia. Also on September 16th, the Russian Defense Ministry said that Russian nuclear-armed Tu-160 strategic bombers had practiced launching cruise missiles over the Barents Sea north of the Nordic countries. Accordingly, the bombers flew for about 4 hours over the neutral waters of the Barents Sea, escorted by Mi-31 fighters. In addition, the Russian Northern Fleet's Marines practiced repelling a simulated enemy landing on a peninsula in the region. The video shows troops supported by attack helicopters and ground forces using UAVs, anti-tank grenade launchers, and automatic weapons to repel simulated enemies. Warships from the Russian Baltic Fleet, supported by fighter jets, test-fired cruise missiles, and simulated enemy ships, while the fleet's mobile land-based launchers also participated in the exercise in the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. The troops used the TUN-MDM radio reconnaissance complex to detect the location of enemy forces, transmitting coordinates to the UAV and demolition units. Belarus is a close ally of Russia and shares borders with Ukraine, Russia, as well as NATO members Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. Belarus currently hosts Russia's tactical nuclear arsenal, which is still controlled and commanded by Moscow. Minsk is also working to reopen and upgrade nuclear storage facilities from the Soviet Union. Lukashenko said it was natural for Russian tactical nuclear weapons to be included in the JAP exercises. "We are practicing everything there. The West knows this. We are not hiding it," he said. From firing conventional infantry weapons to nuclear warheads. Again, we must be able to do all of this. Otherwise, why would these weapons be present on the territory of Belarus? But he added, "We have absolutely no plans to threaten anyone with this." Notably, President Vladimir Putin also personally went to the Nizhny Novgorod region, where some of the exercises took place, to observe and speak. Wearing a military uniform, Mr. Putin affirmed that the JAP 2025 exercise involved 100,000 Russian and Belarusian servicemen, with about 10,000 military equipment mobilized. The Russian president emphasized that the exercise aimed to ensure the unconditional protection of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Union State, i.e. the alliance between Russia and Belarus. The Belarusian Defense Ministry confirmed in a statement that the use of tactical nuclear weapons was practiced along with the deployment of Russian nuclear weapons. Late last year, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Russia could deploy Odesnik, which he claimed was unstoppable, on the territory of Belarus in the second half of 2025.
September 16th. Reuters, citing 3 sources, reported that the Chanup Group, the monopoly operator of Russia's oil pipeline system, has warned oil companies that it may have to reduce production following a series of attacks by Ukrainian drones on key export terminals and oil refineries. However, on the official website, Snap denied this and called it fake news, saying it was part of the West's information war against Russia. Over the past 10 years, oil and gas have brought in between a third and a half of the total Russian federal budget, making them the main source of funding for the government. Since last month, Ukraine has stepped up attacks on Russia's energy infrastructure to complicate Moscow's war effort and reduce Kremlin revenues. The attacks damaged at least 10 refineries, cutting Russia's refining capacity by nearly 20% at one stage, and damaged the biggest Baltic oil fields, Ust Luga and Prim. Russian authorities have not yet announced the exact damage or the impact on exports. But sources said Transneft recently restricted oil companies from storing crude in its pipeline system. As a result, the company warned that if infrastructure is further damaged, it will be forced to accept less oil from operators. Sources said this could force Russia, which accounts for about 9% of global oil output, to reduce production. The West has repeatedly imposed sanctions on Russia's oil and gas industry, but Moscow has maintained exports by shifting to Asia, with China and India being its two biggest markets. Last week, Ukraine used drones to attack Russia's largest oil terminal, Premx, for the first time, forcing it to temporarily shut down. Premx has a capacity of more than 1 million barrels of oil a day, equivalent to more than 10% of Russia's total output. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said the attacks had caused heavy damage, calling them the fastest-acting sanctions. Russia does not have the capacity to store oil as large as the SEUS, so the impact of the attacks was more severe. Premx partially resumed operations over the weekend, but it is unclear when it will fully recover. Last month, the UST Luga terminal was also attacked by drones, reducing its oil export capacity. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and its allies, including Russia, began increasing production in April after a long period of cuts to prop up oil prices. Under the New Deal, Russia's production quota for September will rise to 9.449 million barrels a day from 9.334 million barrels a day in the month. However, J.P. Morgan warned that Russia's ability to increase production is threatened by limited storage capacity. Goldman Sachs said that the damage to many refineries will also cause bottlenecks that will affect production. However, both banks expect Russia's oil output to fall only slightly because of strong demand from the Asian market for Russian oil.
According to Xin Radio, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has accelerated the trend of drone proliferation to the extent that the U.S., which possesses the world's most advanced military and defense industrial complex, has fallen behind by simply attaching explosives. A UAV costing less than $1,000 can take down a tank worth millions of US dollars. For many U.S. service members, this technology and tactic are still new, but for the U.S. military, it's a big problem. Most U.S. soldiers lack knowledge of how to combat unmanned systems. Although the U.S. has achieved many successes in manufacturing large, expensive weapons such as engines, tanks, and missiles in many respects, the country is not yet ready to rapidly produce large quantities of small, inexpensive systems like drones. U.S. defense officials are now scrambling to catch up. Last July, Secretary of Defense Pitt sent a memo to senior leaders to promote the adoption of drones by the U.S. military in recent months. The U.S. military has begun manufacturing and 3D printing drones, while also training on simulation equipment. General C. Taylor, commander of the U.S. Army's 1st Armored Division, once shared that this is not a problem for tomorrow, but a problem for today. And the first battle of the next war will involve more drones. Colonel Nick Ryan, who is in charge of the office overseeing drone integration, told CNN that they have a plan to ensure every unit in the U.S. Army is equipped with drones by fiscal year 2026. The ultimate goal is for soldiers to view drones as if they were their personal weapons, radios, night vision goggles, or grenades. Under the Pentagon's Replicator Initiative, a program announced in 2023 to promote mass production of low-cost systems for the military, the U.S. aims to build only 3,000 drones in 2 years. While military units are striving to catch up, the U.S. faces production barriers to match the capabilities and output of countries like China and Russia. The push for smaller, cheaper systems is a paradigm shift for the U.S. defense industry. Companies can no longer afford to spend years developing or updating something that may already be obsolete by the time it reaches soldiers on the front lines. Chris Pro, president of defense technology company Endural Industries, said the problem is that the Pentagon has historically viewed drones in the same way it considers the procurement of large defense weapons. While Ukrainian companies often use cheap Chinese components and chips for drones, those components are banned in U.S. weapons. Notably, those components in the U.S. are in some cases 100 times more expensive. Mass production would reduce costs but could exceed demand. Ukraine has offered to assist the U.S. in drone production. The U.S. has already transferred billions of U.S. dollars in weapons to Ukraine, and now Ukraine sees an opportunity to send something back to Washington. During a White House visit last month, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky proposed a $50 billion deal to President Donald Trump to supply and co-produce drones with the U.S. Zelensky told reporters that the program is still not finalized but will achieve the capability to supply 10 million unmanned systems per year within the next 5 years. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Mikhailo Fedorov shared with CNN that, especially in the last 6 months, there has been a fundamental change in the perception of how drones operate and the development process of this industry. Fedorov said he has seen a surge in demand for Ukrainian drone data. Tens of thousands of drone videos of attacks can be used to train AI systems. According to Fedorov, Ukraine can leverage its drone innovations in exchange for more financial or material support in the future. Fedor emphasized that this is a geopolitical card that our president will consider how to use. It will be a great support for allies and exactly the relationship we need to have with them. We provide high-quality drones, high-quality data, and our expertise, and in return, we receive more security assistance. In June this year, Ukraine's Minister of Defense stated that domestic companies have increased their production capacity to 4 million drones this year. Analysts believe that drone conflicts in the vast Indo-Pacific region will be very different from those on the less mobile fronts of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. However, the technology used may still be the same, and China now produces tens of millions of small drones each year, which worries the U.S. Samuel Bendet, a military analyst and advisor at the Center for Naval Analyses, emphasized that we must be ready for that. We must understand that this is essentially a technological shift from which there is no turning back. On September 16, U.S. media reported that the Trump administration had approved the first arms aid packages to be financed by NATO allies under a new financial mechanism. These aid packages will use the Ukraine Needs Priority List (PN) mechanism established by the U.S. and NATO to coordinate and meet Ukraine's most urgent needs on the battlefield. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Airprice Kobe approved the aid packages, each worth up to $500 million. The goods could be delivered early as Washington resumes the supply of Quina weapons with funding from allied governments. Through PN, the allies will pool funds to buy U.S. weapons, ammunition, and equipment from stockpiles. This mechanism could provide up to $10 billion in total for Quina weapons. Since the previous administration began earlier this year, the Trump administration has sold weapons to Ukraine or transferred shipments approved by the previous administration to the B. The P marks the first time the aid packages have been initiated in Trump's second term amid his opposition to the previous administration's pouring billions of dollars in U.S. aid into the country. However, the mechanism risks increasing tensions between NATO and Russia. Sources did not disclose the exact details of the weapons list that European countries have ordered for Ukraine, but said it includes KF-type air defense systems that are very close to a wave of Russian drone and missile attacks. A source added that the P list is still being reviewed after passing the Pentagon's assessment. A source revealed that all Ukraine has requested a lot of equipment. It is this supply that has helped them hold the line so far. According to experts, Ukraine's needs remain unchanged from previous months for air defense, interceptor missiles, rocket launchers, and mortars. Last month, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that Ukraine aims to receive at least $1 billion per month from its allies to buy weapons made in the United States. The plan also includes a $50 billion partnership with Ukrainian companies to produce drones along with at least 10 U.S.-made air defense systems. On May 16, the Turkey Post newspaper, citing Ukrainian intelligence sources, reported that the country's military intelligence conducted a special operation in the Russian Far East against a Marine unit. The operation targeted the 47th Separate Airborne Battalion of the 155th Guards Marine Brigade stationed near the Chitova settlement in the Kremovsky Krai region. This Russian region, whose capital is Vladivostok, is located on the Pacific coast near the borders with China and North Korea, more than 8,000 kilometers from K. The brigade has been involved in some of the fiercest fighting in the UQA conflict, including near Kiev, Fuleta, Mariupol, and most recently on the Sea and Pops fronts. Sources say that at around 9 a.m. local time on May 16, two powerful explosions rocked a parking lot in the compound of the 47th Separate Airborne Battalion. Russian social media reported a heavy security presence with helicopters hovering overhead and the area cordoned off near administrative buildings and the car park. Some roads were partially blocked and cars were checked. Russian media initially described the explosion as a possible ignition device malfunction. However, Ukrainian provincial news agencies claimed the explosions were intentional and resulted in casualties on the Russian side. The officer reported several ambulances at the scene.
According to the news agency TIN-TAS on September 17, immediately announced that it will hold an international security forum at the end of May 2026, at the same time preparing for the first Russian-Arab summit to take place in October this year. These are considered two events of great significance in strengthening the role of Moscow in the international arena as well as promoting multilateral cooperation in the context of the complicated global security situation. Accordingly, the Secretary of the Russian Security Council Wilkaz Su said that the Russian president has decided to hold a large-scale security forum in Moscow in 2026. The event will take place from October 26 to 29 with the expected participation of many countries, international organizations, and experts in the field of security. Mr. Sugu emphasized that this will be the most important and influential forum that Russia has to exchange views, promote dialogue and seek common solutions to current security challenges. In addition, Mr. So also announced that Moscow will host the first Russia-Arab summit on October 15. He affirmed that this event will become an important milestone in global politics, reflecting the current level of cooperation between Russia and the Arab world, and creating new momentum for bilateral and multilateral relations in many fields. According to the Secretary of the Russian Security Council, the above two events are not only important but also demonstrate Moscow's commitment to promoting security cooperation and international dialogue. He also emphasized that Russia is ready to strengthen bilateral relations with many partners, including in the fields of trade and investment, thereby strengthening political and economic links in the context of the world going through many changes. Observers say that Russia's announcement of hosting large-scale international events demonstrates its desire to increase its influence in the global security structure, while affirming Moscow's central role in multilateral cooperation mechanisms. In particular, the Russia-Arab Summit is expected to open a new chapter in relations between Russia and the Middle East-North Africa region, which is one of Russia's strategic focuses in terms of politics, security and economy. In the context of the world facing many challenges such as regional conflicts, terrorism risks, energy security and climate change. Multilateral security forums are considered an opportunity for countries to share views, find common ground and promote substantive cooperation. NGAC hopes that the 202nd International Security Forum will become a platform for forming specific initiatives, contributing to global stability. By simultaneously hosting the 202nd International Security Forum and the Russia-Arab Summit, Moscow is demonstrating its determination to maintain an active role in international cooperation processes as well as affirming its position in regional and global security issues.
RT News Agency reported that Prime Minister Keir Starmer has just announced that the UK will deploy a number of AO fighter Typhoon fighter jets to patrol Polish airspace. These aircraft are not just a show of force. They are very important in preventing intrusions, protecting NATO airspace, and protecting our national security and that of our allies, said PM Starmer when announcing the plan. Poland launched the Defender 25 exercise last month, which involved around 30,000 troops, including soldiers from other NATO member states. Consider sending 3 helicopters to Poland, while Spain, Italy, and Sweden have also pledged additional support. The UK government said that British fighter jets will join French Rafale, German Aerofighter, and Danish F-16 aircraft in the coming days as part of NATO's Eastern Sanchi mission. The move comes amid escalating tensions after Poland accused Russia of violating its airspace with a Russian UAV. Russia has denied the allegations, however. The Russian Defense Ministry said that all recent drone operations were directed at military targets in Ukraine and had nothing to do with Poland. On March 16th, Hungarian Foreign and Trade Minister Kary Péter Gyszado criticized the leaders of the Baltic and Nordic countries for urging Hungary to reduce its dependence on Russian energy, saying the advice ignored Budapest's geographical limitations. At recent EU summits, the leaders of the Baltic and Nordic countries have repeatedly urged Hungary to invest in renewable energy and to end its contract with the Russian energy group Gazprom. According to these leaders, reducing dependence on Russian energy is key to European security, and these countries are ready to share with Hungary their experience in building LNG natural gas beds. However, sharing on social network X, Hungarian Foreign and Trade Minister Péter Gyszado said that it is completely unreasonable for the Baltic and Northern European countries to urge Hungary to escape from Russian energy dependence. According to Mr. Gyszado, Geography plays a leading role in determining a country's energy supply options. The Baltic and Northern European countries, with the advantage of bordering the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea, can quickly diversify their energy supply after the Russia-Ukraine conflict breaks out in 2022. These countries can easily build infrastructure to import LNG natural gas beds from the US and Norway to reduce their dependence on supplies from Russia. However, Hungary is landlocked and has no coastline to build an oil refinery or LNG natural gas terminal in the short term. Therefore, securing energy supplies remains Hungary's top priority, and the country will not compromise its energy security. Minister Gizado's statement was made in the context of Hungary's energy security has recently been seriously threatened after Ukraine's attacks on the Duspa pipeline disrupted oil supplies from Russia. In addition, U.S. President Donald Trump recently pressured EU countries, including Hungary, to stop buying Russian oil, considering this a condition for peace in Ukraine. According to analysts, Minister Gizado's statement criticizing reducing dependence on Russian energy could increase divisions within the EU. Especially in the current context, the EU is discussing measures to enhance energy security, including reducing dependence on Russia, improving infrastructure, and expanding renewable energy production.
On the Bop front in Donetsk province, the latest developments on the battlefield reflect that the Russian offensive is falling into chaos and dispersion, threatening to cause the collapse of the entire campaign. Specifically, according to Europan Press, reports from the BR front line said that the level of Russian attacks on both flanks has clearly decreased. Ukrainian analysts commented that the recent attacks of Russian forces are disjointed and uncoordinated, without the support of heavy mechanized forces. On the western flank near Ukeda, Russian offensive efforts are said to have been reduced to chaotic infiltrations, completely lacking combined arms support. On the eastern flank near Minarat, the situation is no better when patchwork attacks end with Russian soldiers abandoning their vehicles and retreating because of fierce Ukrainian fire. When Russia's efforts to encircle and trap are said to have failed, Ukraine quickly took advantage of the opportunity at the site. Ukrainian units launched a fierce counterattack, liberating the town and re-raising the national flag in the center of the area. Video footage from the battlefield shows Ukrainian forces inside the town while Russian attempts to regain control of the area failed. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian General Staff said that on February 15, there were 173 clashes between Ukraine and Russia on the battlefield, with the most intense Russian attacks recorded in the city of Borov. In an attempt to regain the initiative on the eastern flank near Minarat, the Ukrainian army repelled a series of Russian armored attacks, then counterattacked and pushed the enemy back. In particular, footage from near Haradipka is said to show Russian troops retreating under pressure from Ukrainian Marines.
On September 16, in an interview with the Nghe newspaper, the Russian embassy in Oslo said that Norway is becoming a testing ground for new weapons serving NATO's Arctic military strategy. The Russian diplomatic representative said that most of these weapons are used against Moscow. Previously, the Quicking Smart anti-ship bomb designed to attack mobile targets at sea at long distances was tested in Norwegian waters. According to Russian experts, the North Atlantic Alliance is keeping an eye on Norway because the country is preparing for military operations in the Arctic, where it will test unmanned aerial vehicles. Russian military expert Alex Leonkov noted that Norway was not chosen randomly because Oslo is located on the northern flank of NATO and the US-led military bloc has long planned to strengthen its military position in the Arctic theater. Moreover, the Northern Sea Route passes through the testing sites and the US wants to control or blockade this area. Developing modern weapons systems that can operate in Arctic conditions is essential for that goal. The expert told Investia that Norway has the ability to develop military equipment that can operate in the Arctic and that they have a number of innovative solutions. According to Leonkov, Russia is ready for NATO exercises. Moscow has its own program to re-equip its fleet, including hypersonic anti-ship systems, Kinnan-type hypersonic or cruise missiles, and Russia is working on developing next-generation missile systems. For his part, Vadim Kozylin, director of the Institute of Contemporary International Affairs at the Diplomatic Academy of the Russian Foreign Ministry, believes that the Arctic is an area of growing interest to NATO. He explained that weapons tested in the region in the future will include submarine-launched drones. They would be used for strikes and reconnaissance in the event of a military conflict. and the US would play a key role in NATO's Arctic strategy, the expert added. He said the Arctic could already be a testing ground for the technology.
In the context of drones becoming popular in the Russia-Ukraine war, military robots operating on the ground are also increasingly asserting their important role in real combat. With a variety of types from light electric to heavy diesel models, they undertake many tasks from attack, mine clearance, supply transportation, rescue, and many other complex technical tasks. Ukraine has also recently launched a new military robot called Buffalo, combining AI artificial intelligence with modular technology to serve the task of gunnery and mine clearance on the front line. Buffalo belongs to the group of heavy vehicles. Unlike many previous robot models, it is designed to travel long distances and can continue to operate even when hit by bullets. The biggest strength of Buffalo is the diesel engine combined with a fuel tank that can be customized for each mission, allowing the vehicle to operate continuously for a distance of 100 to 200 kilometers without changing the battery. This is a clear advantage over electric robots that are difficult to meet the requirements of long battles. Not only is it durable, Buffalo is also designed to withstand harsh combat conditions. Its European armored chassis helps it withstand the tank blast and minimize damage when a 152mm cannon explodes at a distance of over 100 m. Even after being damaged, the wheels can still continue to operate, ensuring that the vehicle is not completely disabled. Buffalo's communication system is also focused on. The vehicle uses Starlink combined with GPS or radio waves with CRPA antenna to prevent interference. In case Sting is interrupted or disabled, the UAV with the integrated role can immediately relay the signal to maintain connection for the mission. With a weight of about 4 tons, a maximum speed of 20 km per hour and the ability to move close to the ground, Buffalo can both ensure mobility and maintain secrecy in real combat. At the same time, the powerful engine also allows it to transport supplies or rescue stranded vehicles, contributing to optimizing mission time and limiting risks for soldiers on the battlefield. Buffalo is also equipped with a modern camera system that detects obstacles within a range of 15 m, thereby automatically suggesting a safe route and stopping when necessary. Even with AI support for navigation, all decisions are still in the hands of humans, Project Director Vlap affirmed. The robot can lock onto the target and follow it, but it is absolutely not allowed to decide to attack on its own. I will never let it replace humans to do that. The Buffalo project officially started in January this year. After only a few months, the research team has successfully manufactured and tested a specialized version for mine clearance, including the vehicle body, hydraulic system, grinding copper, control panel, and trailer. According to the developer, about 70% of Buffalo's components are manufactured in Ukraine, mainly domestic electronics and optics. The rest are imported from European suppliers. Buffalo is designed with a modular architecture that allows quick disassembly of parts so that the robot can easily transform to adapt to a variety of missions. The development team is currently testing additional weapons modules and remote infantry tools to be installed on the robot. Currently, the 11-channel radio jamming system has passed testing and is ready to be integrated into the platform. Mr. Vlab added, "We are aiming for a simple platform where each part can be removed and replaced with another part." Regarding the roadmap, the team will hold an official introduction before proceeding with technical standardization and putting into production. The initial capacity is expected to be about 10 units per month, with plans to be ready to increase production scale according to demand. The cost of the vehicle has not been announced yet.
September 16th. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she had a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump about stepping up joint efforts to increase economic pressure on Russia through additional measures. In a post on social network X, Ms. von der Leyen wrote that the Commission will soon present a 19th package of sanctions targeting cryptocurrencies, banks, and energy. The Commission will also propose accelerating the phase-out of fossil fuel imports from Russia. More than 3 years after Russia launched its military campaign in Ukraine, the U.S. and the European Union still import billions of dollars of energy and goods from Russia, from liquefied natural gas to enriched uranium. the EU has long vowed to end its dependence on Russian energy, making it one of its key priorities after the conflict in Ukraine broke out in May 2022, with the EU aiming to end its purchases of Russian oil and gas by May 1, 2028. However, signs in recent times suggest that Europe faces challenges in cutting off Russian gas. European countries have been trying to find alternatives to Russian pipeline gas, including importing liquefied natural gas, LNG. However, imported LNG from abroad is much more expensive than natural gas supplied through pipelines from Russia under long-term contracts. The U.S. has stepped up pressure on Europe to play a stronger role in helping in Russia's military campaign in Ukraine. Mr. Trump has demanded that the EU impose tariffs on India and China, the biggest buyers of Russian oil, and stop importing energy from Russia. On 13th, President Trump sent a letter to NATO countries urging them to stop buying Russian oil, and said he was ready to impose major sanctions to end the conflict at home. President Trump also warned of economic pressure on Russia. Trump said sanctions on banks and oil and tariffs would be very heavy. President Trump also asserted that he was doing a lot to pressure Russia, mentioning the increase in tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. He also argued that this was a European problem, not an American problem. This was not the first time in September that President Trump said he was disappointed with the Russian leader. On 13th, the White House boss announced that he would take certain measures. A few days later, Trump said he was ready to move to a second phase of sanctions against Russia.